Welcome to the Six Rivers Media Sports Huddle, a podcast with video brought to you by Six Rivers Media, the only locally owned and locally operated media outlet in the area. We're happy to be here and bring you this Six Rivers Media Sports Huddle show to talk about high school sports in the area. Of course, it's football time here in Northeast Tennessee and Scott County, Virginia. And stick with us all season long as we'll be covering the action in Tri-Cities and Scott County, Virginia. And guys, we have a big week ahead of us. Week 1 of the high school football season. Got some great games on the schedule already. And what we're going to do is dive into some of the few main teams around the area, including Dobyns-Bennett, Science Hill, Westridge, David Crockett, and Daniel Boone. As we dive into the action of this high school football season, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Lazy J Farms Old Fashioned Butcher Shop. Check them out if you can. And guys, let's go ahead and talk about some of these high school football previews, give the audience an insight of what to look at in 2024. And of course, if we don't touch on the school that you're listening for or watching for, make sure to check out our 2024 high school football preview tab this Thursday, and that will be available for in-depth previews of all the schools in the area, including 20 high schools in the Tri-Cities and Scott County, Virginia. But first, we're going to hit on the main schools here in the area and touch on what you can expect coming out of them this football season. So, JD, let's talk about the one here in Kingsport, Dobyns-Bennett, man.
And why not? The Dobyns-Bennett Indians, so close and yet so far away a year ago. 5-4 overall record, but just take a look at some of the games they lost. Farragut, Jefferson County, the Science Hill, and of course Elizabethton. 3 of those were by a touchdown. And the other one, the Jefferson County game, Dobyns-Bennett led 14-6 at halftime, couldn't score again. Jeff County, the region champion, went on to win 25-14. So it just tells you just how close Dobyns-Bennett was last year, and it's just a matter of what could have been. And after that overtime loss at Science Hill, they have to go to Bearden, and it's just a bad matchup. They fall in the first round for the 3rd consecutive year. Have not won a playoff game since advancing to the quarterfinals in 2020. But this year, Dobyns-Bennett is looking to go. Joey Christian told me Dobyns-Bennett's looking to go a little faster on offense. Now, when I say faster, I'm not saying Josh Heupel, so don't be thinking Chip Kelly, Oregon, or anything like that. But just a little faster than before. They've tried to simplify their offense a little bit. They do return senior quarterback Austin Sykes, who won the starting job late last year. He will be returning behind center, and now, but their Dobyns-Bennett, one problem for them is they're really thin right now, especially on the offensive line. Joey Christian, in fact, even told me in his coaching career at Dobyns-Bennett, at least, he's not had to play guys both ways on the offensive line. But this year, it's going to be different. He's going to have to play guys both ways just because Dobyns-Bennett doesn't have the depth right now. 3-year starter Will Ford at center. He's going to be on the defensive line. So are Baker Correll, Tyler Grizzle, both of them juniors, of course. At some point, could fatigue become a factor? So obviously, that does become a concern at some point. This will be Dobyns-Bennett's first time playing guys on both sides of the ball like that, at least on the offensive line. Although they've played several skill guys on both sides of the ball before. Of course, guys you think like Tylen Taylor. Dobyns-Bennett's by far their leading receiver last year, over 500 yards. And guys like Jalen Thomas, Trey Wyndham, guys like that, and even Peyton Franklin, who's moving from running back to tight end. Tegan Begley, who's moved from wide receiver last year, running back this year. And he's also played in the secondary as well. So, a lot of two-way starters for Dobyns-Bennett, probably more than they've had in recent years. So it's going to be interesting to see, especially if they're playing a faster offense, how that factors in to Dobyns-Bennett's success this season.
Yeah, and you always wonder, how that minimal depth will play out in a Class 6A where you have all those large schools. And, of course, Dobyns-Bennett gets a good test with a 6A school this Friday with playing Farragut up there at Dobyns-Bennett. Another one, we'll flip over to Johnson City, the other 6A school in the area, Science Hill. Jeff Birchfield over here, he has some insights on Science Hill. What can we expect from the Hilltoppers this year?
Well, the Hilltoppers, Stacy Carter, head coach, really likes the fact that they're a deep team. He said they're a team that he enjoys coaching a lot. Spencer Taylor comes back as the starting quarterback. He got some experience last year, so gives them a lot of experience at that position. But they've also got a capable backup in Cole Rousseau. A lot of people may know him from the baseball season because he was a good pitcher for them. But if you talk about Science Hill, the one player stands out on offense or defense more than anyone else is middle linebacker Baylor Necessary. He was our Kingsport Times News, Johnson City Press Elite 11 Defensive Player of the Year last year. And I mean, he's just terrific in that position. But they can also put him at running back, late in a game. He's a guy who can milk the clock and all that. But that running back position for Science Hill, they're like doing more of a running back by committee. So, that's going to be fun to watch. You've got some guys like Malik Anderson and Aiden Perry. And like JD was talking about with Dobbins Bennett, a lot of the guys at Science Hill, even though they got a lot of depth, they have a lot of guys playing both ways, and also that's pretty good. But then you look on the linebacker, you got Braden Austin, who's going to be there, Elijah Benavis, Anderson again, White Bellinger, so there's some really good guys coming up. And one thing about Science Hill this year, they've got such a tough schedule early on. They play Elizabethton, they play Anderson County, they've got Maryville early on in the schedule. So then, of course, the big game with Dobbins Bennett's always. So, they went 7-4 last year, lost to Maryville in the first round of the playoffs. So, you feel like this team has enough talent to where they could not only match that, but even better that. But still, it's not going to be easy with the type of schedule, they've got here. But another kid I failed to mention on offense, but should make a big impact is Corbin LeSueur. He was a transfer from Sullivan East, and he's already committed to the University of Colorado, so he's really a terrific guy there. And then we mentioned Stephen Famoyan. He's really a good receiver for him, sort of a home run hitter, got a lot of speed for Science Hill.
Yeah, and you talk about this Science Hill team and just what they bring to the table. One thing Coach Carter told me that he really likes is the way this team is gelling with each other, and he's having fun each day coaching this team. I got to check them out against Morristown West in a football scrimmage, and they just all looked cohesive, like you mentioned, Jeff. And this Science Hill team has a lot of potential this year. And another team that has a lot of potential this year in that 6A is Westridge. And we'll talk about them a little bit, how they're coming back healthy this year. Starting quarterback Trey Frazier went down week 5 against David Crockett in a week 5 game. And they started out the season 4-1 before his injury, and then finished the season 1-4 last year to finish the season 5-5 overall. So now he's back and healthy, and the main priority for them is to keep their guys healthy. Of course, keep Trey Frazier healthy. And Trey has some weapons on offense too this year. I mean, they've moved big all-state offensive tackle Trent Tatum, 6'7", 285 pounds. He's going to be playing some tight end now, and that gives you a big target in the passing game. And somebody that Trey Frazier, I mean, it's kind of hard to miss a target like that. You can expect him to give some problems within the red zone, right there on goal line opportunities. Also on the offense, you have running back Ethan Amix. I watched him against Elizabethton, and he's a running back that brings some speed. He has elusiveness, and he has some power too. He could take a hit, and he was taking some hits against them Elizabethton boys, those linebackers, and you all know Elizabethton has some good-sized boys that will bring a stinging, when they hit. And he did an excellent job just, running the ball there against Elizabethton in that scrimmage. And you flip over to the defensive side, and they have some new faces. They're trying to keep guys from playing both sides of the ball, so they have some younger guys there. And I want to go back to the offensive line real quick before we talk about defense, and just talk about the 3 sophomores on the offensive line that is allowing Trent Tatum to move to tight end. Those 3 sophomores include Kingston McConnell, Cal Tatum, Trent's brother, and Hayden Music. So those 3 will play some offensive line. You could see them on defensive line too, but like I said, Coach Justin Hilton over there is wanting to keep guys from playing both sides of the ball. New faces on the defense, freshmen that could really stand out. Orlando Mack, there at the linebacker position. Coach Hilton said he really, really likes his upside. He goes from playing middle school to playing, guys like Dobbins Bennett now. He's with the Friday Night Lights now with the big boys there. So interesting to see freshman Orlando Mack back there at the linebacker position. And a couple new faces at the safety position include Braylon Vance and Jackson Walsh. They're going to kind of just try to find their rhythm there in the secondary. Luckily, they have Caden Coates and Gabe Music back there at cornerback who are returning, who started for Westridge last year at cornerback. But the cool thing about this whole Westridge team, is that these seniors have been there all 4 years since the school, all the Sullivan schools joined together to create Westridge. So these seniors now have been there all 4 years, have created a culture there, and they're really wanting to do something big, as their last year there at Westridge, and create a legacy there at Westridge for the rest of them to follow there. And of course, one game that they have circled is week 3 against Dobbins-Bennett, and trying to take down, the Sullivan County rival in Dobbins-Bennett. That's the game that they're really looking forward to try to prove themselves this year.
That game is all about respect, Dylan.
Yeah.
I mean, last year Westridge jumped out 14-0, and then Dobbins-Bennett scored 41 consecutive points, went on to win the game 47-21. Dobbins-Bennett has not lost to a Sullivan County team since, of course, 1993. Sullivan South beat them by 4 touchdowns that year. So really, that game is about more than pride. That game's about respect. So week 3, I think both teams are going to have that circled, because with it being a conference game, is going to be the first step toward the playoffs for both teams. So keep an eye on that game as we go forward.
Yeah, that'd be a good gauge going forward, especially there early in the season, to get that game out of the way there. And other 2 schools in the area over in Gray and Jonesboro, David Crockett and Daniel Boone. Andrew, why don't you hit on a couple of those schools there? Tell us a little bit of the outlook of their 2024 season, what we can expect from those 2, and Daniel Boone and David Crockett.
Yeah, and obviously those 2 teams compete for the Musket Bowl, one of the biggest rivalries in the area. It's been owned by Daniel Boone as of late. Last 3 have went to the way of the Blazers. As a matter of fact, it's been dominant most of those three years, with Boone outscoring Crockett the last 3 times 98-21. So obviously Crockett looking to right the ship in that rivalry game, and they're hoping to do it with a very talented sophomore class. It's led by quarterback A.J. Wynn, and overall, head coach Hayden Chandley really likes this sophomore class. He thinks it has the chance to be his best overall class since the class of 2020. Obviously, that was headlined by Prince Colley. He really is hopeful for this class for Crockett, but everything's going to be resting on that sophomore quarterback in A.J. Wynn. Last year didn't necessarily go the way the Pioneers wanted to, 3-7 with a big loss to Boone in the Musket Bowl. Meanwhile, Boone themselves, they've also got a sophomore starting at quarterback in Cole Stevenson. Got to talk with him last week. Very poised young man, even just in carrying conversation. Very impressive. He got thrown into action last year as a freshman toward the back end of the year due to injury, and it was really a baptism by fire situation. But he was able to grow a lot from it, learn a lot from it, and feels very comfortable leading this offense this year. But mentioned injuries for Boone. They also went 3-7 last year. Things kind of took a turn shortly after the Musket Bowl in terms of team health, but overall, I think a lot of the health of the Blazers will come down to offensive line play. Obviously, you want to keep your skill guys upright. You want to give them a chance to make some plays, and head coach Jeremy Jenkins really likes his offensive line. He said that we're going to go how this offensive line meshes, and I think early on there have been some tweaks, but overall, I think he likes where they're at given this point in the season. But Boone, Crockett, Musket Bowl should be another fun meeting this year. Talked about Cole Stevenson, his brother Cooper, a senior, should be one of his big targets in the slot. And when I talked with Cooper about the Musket Bowl, he said that a goal of his is to win the Musket Bowl every year of his Daniel Boone career, given how big to the culture that rivalry game is.
Well, last year it ended up, both teams' records aside, I still think the game is too early in the year. TSSAA, get on that, take note. But it ended up deciding who goes to the playoffs. Daniel Boone got the win, Daniel Boone got to the playoffs, and Crockett did not. So instead of, and I'm sorry, if the leaves aren't changing colors yet, it's too early for the Musket Bowl. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry at all. That's just the way it is. I'm getting Tennessee-Florida vibes instead of Florida State vibes that we should be getting from that game. That game needs to be later in the year. TSSAA, take notice.
Yeah, those rivalry games are always better at the end of the year, I feel like, especially when you got that playoff spot that you're fighting for, and that game decides who's getting in and who's going to be left out. So that's always fun to do. So there you have some of the high school preview action. And now we'd like to go on and thank our sponsor, Lazy J Farms Old Fashioned Butcher Shop.
Lazy J Farms has been raising the finest cattle and all-natural pork for 3 generations on the family farm in Fall Branch. Their blonde Aquitaine herd offers a leaner, healthier, and more tasteful beef. And the butcher shop is local, farm to table, and 100% authentic. This is the way your grandfather shot for me, with steaks cut to order, quality assured, and ready to ship to your door. Open Thursday through Saturday on Bloomingdale Road in Kingsport. Come see us.
All right, y'all. Now let's take a look at our Six Rivers Media Sports Huddle Game of the Week. This is the biggest game of the week, in our opinion, that has really caught our eyes. And, of course, no one else than Science Hill at Elizabethton, the 100th meeting between these two teams. Our good friend Jeff Birchfield caught up with both coaches from both teams as we get into the 100th meeting between these two. So let's hear what head coach Stacy Carter of Science Hill has to say before getting into this game.
Being a part of history, the 100th meeting between Science Hill and Elizabethton, talk about what that rivalry means to the Science Hill side.
First of all, I guess for me, it just seems special just to be part of something, way bigger than me and way bigger than a lot of things when people have had a rivalry for that long and played this wonderful game for that long. So, but I think it's a big deal. It's something that, two good communities coming together, and we've had a lot of good football games too. So it's exciting, and anytime you can go and have an anniversary of 100 years, I think it's special.
That was Science Hill coach Stacy Carter. Now we go into our interview with Elizabethton head coach Sean Witten, who has a unique perspective on this rivalry because Sean was a fan when his grandfather Dave Ryder was coaching. Sean's also been a player in the series, and for the last 2 decades, he's been the head coach of the Elizabethton Cyclones.
It's a 100th meeting. You've got the unique perspective. You've been a fan, you've been a player, and now head coach here for the last couple of decades. So what does the Science Hill rivalry mean to Elizabethton High School?
Well, it's huge, especially to have this game, right out of the first game of the week, first game on the schedule for so many years. It just makes it a marquee matchup. It's just 2 great teams, and then, Elizabethton's always taken an approach as kind of being a small school, and we're not as fast, not as big, not as deep, but we have an opportunity to kind of, we beat them just as many times as they beat us, and it's just a really great tradition. And our kids grew up playing against these guys, in youth football and middle school football. So, it's just it kind of has really put our program an opportunity to kind of compete against the upper echelon in the 6A football teams. But you think about over the years, you think about playing at Old Spurrier Field, Dave Ryder Field. You think about the history. We went a decade and didn't beat these guys. And now, we kind of won like 5 out of the last 6. So just, it's a really great opportunity for East Tennessee football, for 2 really great teams, and especially to play week 1. There's a reason why Tennessee doesn't play Alabama week 1. It's just, it's tough to really prepare for, and then, it really challenges, in a lot of different ways.
Well, we talked to Stacy Carter and Sean Witten, we saw, and then talking to the coaches, Stacy was talking about how this is always a competitive series. You have very few blowouts here. And this year's matchup features a great quarterback matchup between Rhett Slagle, who's the quarterback at Elizabeth, and Spencer Taylor there at Science Hill. So that should be a really, interesting part of this, almost like a Manning-Brady, deal locally. And then, the big thing both coaches stressed on this is you can't make mistakes. You can't have those silly penalties. You can't have those false starts, those personal fouls. And then last year, big thing was turnovers, which went in Elizabethton's favor. And you know what they always say about big games like this, the team that usually wins the turnover battle wins the game, and that was certainly the case. Science Hill had a little stretch in this rivalry where they were dominating, won I think a whole decade straight worth of games, but then now Elizabethton's won 5 of the last 6, so it's sort of flipped around. But regardless, I think Friday night's game's probably going to be close either way.
Yeah, and not to mention, Jeff, the visiting team has won the last 3 games in this rivalry. Obviously Science Hill. Will the trend continue? What do we think?
So, Jeff, you mentioned last year the turnovers, obviously a big pick 6 from the Elizabethan defense. When the game was 14-0, extend the lead to 3 scores. Kind of put the game out of reach. Do we think the Elizabethan defense can make another big play like that in a game that we all expect to be very close?
Yeah, of course, this is a good test for both Science Hill and Elizabethan. Playing either of those teams for anybody in the area will be a good test to begin your season. Kind of gauge yourself or where your team is at, what you could be looking forward to throughout the rest of the season. And one thing that really draws my interest, Jeff, you mentioned the Science Hill running backs. I'm really interested to see how they perform against this Elizabethan defense. We always know Elizabethan brings a hard-nosed defense, and this Science Hill backfield has a lot of potential. So those two going at each other could be a really interesting battle there in the 100th meeting between these two teams. Let's take another minute and hear from our sponsor, Lazy J Farms Old Fashioned Butcher Shop.
The Lazy J Farms tailgate box offers great value all season long. Get 40 pounds of meat for only $110. That's 5 pounds of beef patties and 3 pounds of chicken breasts. 1 pound of thick cut bacon, 3 pounds of premium beef hot dogs and 2 packs of Chicago dogs, and 4 pounds of thick cut pork chops, all for $110 at Lazy J Farms Butcher Shop in Kingsport. Visit us online at lazyjbeef.com.
All right, the other big game of the week here in the area, of course, taking place in Kingsport, is Farragut at Dobbins Bennett. JD got a chance to catch up with head coach Joey Christian of Dobbins Bennett, so let's hear what he has to say now.
I'm going to be honest with you, we have such thin depth at some of our spots that some of the things that I'd like to do we really can't do because we're just kind of scared. I mean, I always say I don't want to coach scared, but we have 2 kids run into each other in practice, and you hold your breath because we're so thin. We just don't have a lot of depth at positions. We've already lost so many to injuries in the preseason. Compete. We want to compete. If we can do that, maybe we can close those games out. Maybe we can win those close games that we didn't last year. Last year our defense played great. Our defense really allowed us to be in every game. It's such a grind from the time you start spring practice to all the time through summer till you get to this game time. You feel like it's never going to get here. Every one of my 28 years, it's like it's never going to get here. But here we are, and it's time.
One thing that stands out about what Joey Christian said is just the lack of depth. And just how he when 2 guys collide in practice, he almost holds his breath at this point because, oh my gosh, is someone else going to go down? I mean, that just tells you where Dobbins Bennett's depth is at right now. And not that playing 2 guys on both sides of the ball is new for Dobbins Bennett, but it just seems like they're doing it more this year, especially on the offensive line, which Joey Christian said he's not had to do nearly this much in his coaching career. So you have to wonder, with it being August, is depth going to come into play for both teams? Because that works on both sides of the ball. You don't know how teams are going to be acclimated to the heat by now. Obviously, there's the heat acclimation period, but you always wonder, just week 1, when you get out there, it's not a scrimmage, not a 7-on-7, it's the real thing. So that's the ultimate question mark for that game. Obviously, Farragut with a new coach, but they haven't changed much of anything. Schematically. Last year, of course, Farragut gained just 122 yards through nearly the entire game, and then the last drive, they drove 87 yards in a minute and a half, and then they beat Dobbins Bennett 24-17. That touchdown catch by Landis Davila, who graduated, by the way. Farragut graduated several seniors, finished under 500, but interestingly enough, beat Dobbins Bennett and then ended the year and ended Eddie Courtney's coaching career with a win over Maryville. So Farragut, you talk about a roller coaster ride, my gosh. That was just a kind of a bizarre season for Farragut last year. So the Admirals themselves had a lot of question marks, but they seemed to settle. They had a quarterback battle coming into the year, but they seemed to settle on the sophomore Corbin Hobson at quarterback. And one of their key wide receivers, who has been injured, who may or may not play Friday night, is, of course, Landon Collins, who is the younger brother of former Farragut Admiral star Braden Collins, and then Mason Collins, who's now running track at Ole Miss. So just the whole Collins lineage there. And their dad, Ryan Collins, was an All-American defensive lineman at Jefferson County back, and then Ryan Collins, the younger brother of Brent and Todd Collins, two guys who actually played in the NFL at one point. So just that whole Collins lineage thing is just. But Landon, I should say, missed the game last year as well. So will he play this year? We don't know. Farragut defensively, they like to base out of odd fronts, but they will almost always bring the fourth guy up to get the little pass rush on. Two inside linebackers, Kent Carbaugh and Henry D. Both of them seniors. Joey Christian seemed to notice them a lot on film. So what Dobbins Bennett, what they need to do is, establish the tempo they want to play and establish the run. And what they can't do is get in a hole, because last year Farragut returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown. Dobbins Bennett had a chance to tie, but then threw an interception in the red zone, and then Farragut scored on a 74-yard pass play. So right away, Dobbins Bennett was in a 2-touchdown hole. That can't happen this year. But if it's any saving grace, and I know I'm going to hear about this if this changes, Farragut has never won at Dobbins Bennett, ever. So Dobbins Bennett does have that going for them, if nothing else. And I know I'm going to hear it nonstop if Farragut gets the first win. But
well, there you go. That was a good preview there, JD, of course, Farragut going into Dobbins Bennett in Week 1. Andrew, as you look at the Week 1 schedule, are there any other games that kind of catch your eye?
I'm a native Carter County guy, admittedly, so anytime you get a county matchup, it piques my interest. So Week 1, Happy Valley Cloudland.
Okay.
Cloudland looked really strong in the Jamboree last Friday up at West Green.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see Sullivan East and Johnson County. Of course, Sullivan East has that air raid offense, and then Johnson County, they're running that new triple option offense, so it's going to be fun to see those two offenses go against each other over there in Bluff City this week. Let's take another minute and hear from our sponsor, Lazy J Farms Old Fashioned Butcher Shop.
Lazy J Farms has been raising the finest cattle and all-natural pork for 3 generations. Our blonde Aquitaine herd offers a leaner, healthier, and more tasteful beef that ships from our store directly to your freezer. This is the way your grandfather shot for meat, only now we wrap it, seal it, and send it right to your door. We have plenty of options to pick from, and they're all fresh and natural. Just visit our website at lazyjbeef.com and choose your package. We'll get it straight to you.
3 games to keep an eye on this week. Volunteer with new interim coach Mike Castle opening up the season at West Ridge, a healthier West Ridge this year. Daniel Boone going to Clyde Irwin, North Carolina to start the year. And, of course, David Crockett at home against the South Green Rebels. So just 3 other games to keep an eye on in the area. Dylan, I cannot wait for this Week 1 of high school football. Not that I could wait anyway, but football's back, baby. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all happy it's back. And there you go. You have a little bit of preview, a little bit of insight from us here at Six Rivers Media. And there are some games of the week that we just named off. And we appreciate you all tuning in and joining us for episode 1 of Six Rivers Media Sports Huddle. Of course, this is a podcast with video. And we'd like to give thanks to our sponsor, Lazy J Farms Old Fashioned Butcher Shop, for sponsoring this show. Thank you all, and tune in weekly as we get into all the high school sports action in the Tri-Cities and Scott County, Virginia.